Hello everyone. Today we'll be learning some of the basics of Audacity, which is a free, open source audio editing program. We are using the most recent version of Audacity as of October 29th, 2014, and running on Windows 7. More specifically, we will be learning how to import audio, do some basic copy and pasting of audio samples, putting in some simple effects such as fade in and out, and how to export as an MP3 file. Audacity is very capable of doing a whole lot of things that are well beyond our basic needs for the purposes of this assignment. However, if you're interested in sound editing, or you finish this assignment and are curious about what else it can do, there are a lot of online tutorials, or you can simply get in the program and start playing around with things to see what they do. Some of it can get pretty technical, so at some point you may require more advanced training, but for simple home projects, you can likely figure out a lot of it on your own. The first thing we want to notice is the layout of the program. You can see the playback controls here in the upper left. You can see some selection tools here in the middle, such as the selection tool, the envelope tool, and the time shift tool, all of which we'll be taking a look at a little bit later. You can also see the volume levels here. We have the playback levels and the recording levels. This tutorial is not about the basic setup for Audacity, so if you do encounter any problems as you're going along, you should go back and do a separate search on how to remedy those issues. Before we begin, we're going to come down here to the bottom and change the selection from end to length. For this assignment, where we're going to be using some random audio samples and we're more concerned with how long they are, this is going to be more helpful to us. However, if we were doing something that required us to start and end at a particular spot within an audio sample, we would go ahead and leave it on end. It should also be noted that all of the sound files being used here are in the public domain. The specific examples that will be used here came from publicdomain4u.com. That's publicdomain, the number 4, the letter U.com. It's crucial that any sound you plan on editing that is not your own original creation is in compliance with copyright law. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to head up here to the Tracks menu, which if you happen to be using an older version of Audacity may still be called Projects. What we're going to do is we're going to come down here to Add New, and we're going to add a new stereo track. In fact, we're going to go ahead and add a second one, just so we have two places to work from. We could also add a simple audio track, but in the event that any of the audio we're going to be using is recorded in stereo, we're going to want to go ahead and preserve that. The next thing we need to do is we need to import our audio. So what we're going to do is we're coming over here to File, come down to Import, and you can see we have different things that we can import here, but we're keeping it simple and we're just importing some audio. Now I already have the files set up here in this tutorial files folder, but you may have to go looking for yours. But we're going to go ahead and import two selections, and we're going to use this Billie Holiday selection. They can't take that away from me, and you can see it's already loaded up there, and this is the entire file here. We're going to come back and import a second file from the same folder, which is Louis Armstrong's version of Struttin' with Some Barbecue. Both great tunes, and I highly encourage you to get familiar with Billie Holiday and Louis Armstrong if you're not already. They should be on everyone's list. Now we get to the fun part. We're going to start messing around with these files and putting them together in different ways. So, what we're going to do is we're going to come down here to our first selection, the Billie Holiday tune, and you can see the names over here on the left, so we know which one we're using. And we're going to select any 30-second selection we want. Make sure that we're still up here on the selection tool, and I'm going to grab this portion here, and if I follow the box down at the bottom here, where we previously selected length, I can see I've selected a 30-second clip. So I'm going to come up here to edit, and just like any other program, I'm going to copy. I'm going to come up here to my first workspace. Doesn't matter where I select right now. I'm going to go ahead and paste that in. Now that's not exactly at the beginning, and I'd like it to be closer there. So immediately what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the time shift tool. Now I can freely move this audio selection anywhere I'd like. I can see the time markers up here at the top telling me 0, 30 seconds, 1 minute, and so on. And I'm going to move this so it's closer to the beginning here. Now, this is zoomed out a little bit far, so I'm going to want to go ahead and zoom that in a little bit. I'm going to come up here to View, zoom in, and I'm going to want to go a little bit more than that so I can get a little bit more detailed. So again, I'm going to zoom in. And you can see that my time markers are changing up at the top. Previously they were coming in every 30 seconds, now I'm getting them every 15, and I can even see the breakdowns further than that. This is going to be good for me. Now, I have to make sure I go back to the selection tool before I do anything else. So I still have all of my audio selected here, which I don't need, so I'm going to just click on another space off to the side. This is going to be a pretty abrupt thing for us to listen to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give us a little fade in. And 4 seconds sounds good. Again, I'm watching down here to know how long that is. But 4 seconds, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to Effect. I'm going to come down to Fade In, and it's going to do that nice and neat for me, and I can even see that it's already happened. So that's great. I have a nice, easy fade in for my first selection. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing here at the end. I'm going to give it about a 4-second fade out, which I'm going to do the same way. I'm going to come up to the Effect menu, come down to Fade Out, and that's it. Nice and easy. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to come down to my second selection, the Louis Armstrong number. Again, I'm looking at the names over here on the left. And I'm going to pick another 30-second clip. Doesn't matter where it starts and ends. I'm just going to pick a 30-second clip here. And there's my 30 seconds. Same process as before. Edit. Copy. Only this time when I come up, I'm going to go ahead and paste this into my second workspace. So I'm going to come up here again to Edit, Paste. And again, I'm going to click on the time shift tool so I can move this to where I want. And it doesn't really matter where I put it right now because I can always adjust it again later. So I'm going to come back to my selection tool. Now, this one, I can see that it's not quite as loud as the first one. The sound waves here just aren't as big. And that might not be a problem, but for the sake of argument, we're going to say it is. I want that to be a little louder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the whole example, come up here to Effect, and I'm going to come down to Amplify. Now, by default, Audacity selects it to the maximum amplification that I can possibly provide. If I go beyond this, if I go any further to the right, I no longer have this as an option. So I'm just going to come back over here to where my previous maximum was allowed. And I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. That's going to work for me. If I wanted to, I could preview it and see if it's really what I want, but this is going to work for me. So I can see that that's made it a little bit louder, and if I wanted to, of course, I could listen to it and see if that's really what I wanted, but that's going to work out fine. So I'm again going to select a portion of the beginning here to do a fade in, but I want this one to be a little longer. So I'm going to select 10 seconds of audio, just like I did before. I'm going to come up to Effect, Fade In, and I have a longer fade in for this one now. And I'm going to go ahead and give it, though, the same fade out we had before, about 4 seconds worth. Effect, Fade Out, There we go. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of this audio here, the whole thing. I'm going to select our time shift tool. And I can again move this whole selection where I want. Now, if I wanted to, I could have this one line up exactly with my first one. So I could get a beautiful fade out and then fade right into my second one. But we're going to get a little crafty here, and we're just going to overlap them a little bit, so that as while one is fading out, the second is fading in, which is sort of a fun effect, and you can use this in your projects, especially when you're trying to place your own narration over a song selection. That's why I gave this one a little bit of a longer fade in. The longer the fade in or the fade out, the more time you have to work with, the more natural it's going to seem. So I have these two examples here now where I have imported the audio, I've done some copying, I've done some pasting, I've moved them around a little bit, I've done some fade-ins, I've done some fade-outs, but maybe what I really want to do here is maybe I want to play with the volume a little bit. Instead of just making the whole thing louder, maybe I only want to make part of it louder or part of it quieter. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to come down here back to our first selection. I have to make sure we come back up to the selection tool. And I'm going to select another chunk of audio. I'm going to take something from the end this time just to change it up. And I'm going to go ahead and select 45 seconds worth, just so I have a little bit more room to work with. Just like before. Edit. Copy. I'm going to come back over to my first track, and again, it doesn't really matter where I paste it in as long as I make sure I'm in the first track right now, because I know I can move it later. And I'm going to go ahead and add my fade in, and I've selected a 4-second fade in. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and give it a fade out as well. Okay. So I'm going to select the audio, grab my time shift tool. I'm going to move it over. I'm going to move this one over just so it lines up with my previous one, so I get that fade out directly into the fade in here. This time what I'm going to do though is I'm going to use the envelope tool. The envelope tool is really cool for doing volume changes on big selections. Rather than just that fade in or fade out, I can change entire sections. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the envelope tool. And we can see that we have a different display here. And if I click and hold, I can change the volume of the entire thing right now. I can't really make it louder, but I definitely have the option to make it quieter. Now I'm going to bring I'm still holding the mouse down, but I'm going to come all the way over to the left and release. You can see there's a tiny little white dot there. That's sort of the first placeholder. If I click again, that first placeholder is going to stay there. So I could create my own fade out this way by just bringing it all the way down, and by, again, still holding the mouse, by dragging right or left, I can change where that goes to. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this middle part a lot quieter. I've just released the mouse. I'm going to go ahead and click right here and leave that right there. Release. Another click and hold. I'm going to bring that back up to the maximum volume and release. So now what I have is a little fade in at the beginning, but ultimately bringing the volume way far down until coming back up here at the end. I'm going to come back to my selection tool. Now what I could do here if I wanted to is I could take part of my second audio tune, or my first if I really felt the need, and I could paste that in here into my workspace too, so that I could actually have my first selection playing quietly in the background while I have something else playing down here. This would be a great way for you to incorporate your narration over your music so that your narration explaining your music could be happening while we actually have that music happening quietly in the background without getting in the way of the narration. It's a great tool for that. So, again, we've used the import audio selection. We have done several effects, fade in, fade out. We've done amplify. You can see there's a lot of effects here. I encourage you just to get in there and play with them to see what they do. We've used the selection tool. We've used the envelope tool. We've used the time shift tool. We have a lot going on here. The last thing we really want to do is we want to save this, and we can save the entire project. We can call this whatever we want. And if we opened this up again, we would see exactly this. But what I really want to do is I want to export this as an MP3. So the first thing I have to remember to do is to get rid of these two selections. Otherwise, they're still going to be a part of my final MP3. So now the only thing I have left is the work that I've edited here. So what I'm going to do, I can't just save it as an MP3. I have to export it. So I'm going to come up here to Export Audio. And I can see lots of options that I have depending on what type of encoders or codecs you may have. And when it comes time to export as an MP3, you may need to go through and download an encoder, which is very normal. But I'm going to go ahead and export this as the same title, Test Project. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the same folder as my other ones. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And yep, we're getting all these cool little warnings. They're fine. Here's some information. If you really want to go in and get detailed, that's fine. For our purposes, it doesn't really matter right now. It's going to go ahead and export everything. And that's it. I've created an MP3 file from other previously existing ones. Audacity is a great tool for this. This is a very, very, very simple tutorial, but I hope it's been helpful for you. And if you have any other questions, there are many other tutorials out there, so please feel free to give them a look. Thank you.